Hey guys, how you going? Hope you're all doing very well. This afternoon I'm going to be doing a movie review. This movie is an action science fiction film from the UK, English language, released in the year 2017, directed by Tommy Wirkola, and this film is called What Happened to Monday. So What Happened to Monday is set in the future. You've got a population problem on Earth. There are way too many human beings. People are giving birth way too quickly and there's not enough resources to keep up with it. So it's a desperate situation that the government actually suggests a new law that has to be passed that demands that families only have one child. If they have more than one child, that they're going to be frozen and they can come back in time once the situation is under control. So it's a very controversial law, but it's a law that is the last resort. And so a grandfather doesn't actually want this law to apply to his grandchildren. Now, his daughter died while giving birth to 7 children that are identically the same. And so the grandfather comes up with the idea that he's going to keep them all together in secret and he's going to name each child after a day of the week. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday and Sunday. And each child is allowed to go outside on their corresponding day and they're going to take on the same persona. So it's one person giving that facade. And so this is the way he's going to keep them together. It's a very loving family and he teaches them the ways of the world, in that each time someone goes outside, they're going to come back, they're going to have a meeting and they're going to tell each other what they've gone through in order to keep that facade going. So 30 years have passed and it's still going. The cover hasn't been blown. And it seems to be very successful until Monday goes missing. So this really freaks out everybody, and so Tuesday has to go out in order to try and find what happened to Monday, but this in turn is putting everything at risk, because if they're both caught, then the government are going to know what's going on. And so it's going to be a very suspenseful sort of quest in order to find the truth, and whether or not the family can stay together is something you're going to have to find out for yourself, because that's as far as I'm going with my synopsis. Now my thoughts on What Happened to Monday. This is a very, very interesting film, and I thought for the most part a very entertaining movie, and that's something that you'd expect from Tommy Wirkola. For those of you who know Scandinavian cinema, Tommy Wirkola is a very good Norwegian director. He created Norwegian horror comedy classics in Dead Snow and Dead Snow 2. He created a very good miniseries called Hellfjord that I thought was very, very black in its comedy, and he also directed another comedy called Kill Buljo. And so since then he's gone over to the United States. He's made Hansel and Gretel Witch Hunters, which I thought was very entertaining, and What Happened to Monday is that same entertaining value that Hansel and Gretel had, in that it's a straight out action film. It's like a cartoon action film, but at the same time this movie possesses stuff that you can really relate to in everyday world. And what you can relate to is government control. In this film, it's about basically stamping down a very controversial law. And this is something that happens in Australia. This is something that happens in the United States. You elect a government that you really trust, and the government can make calls that you don't necessarily agree with, but you have to go along with, because you're not as powerful as the people that are deemed as their leaders. And so it's not necessarily a great thing to have a government, and they're not always going to make great decisions, but the government are making decisions in order for the greater good. But what is the greater good? Is the greater good going to have a negative effect on the people that you're actually ruling? And so this movie shows that, is that the government are having one child per family. And this is to save the planet, but at the same time, it's having that strangle effect on these families. It's tearing families apart. And so on one side, you can understand what they're trying to do in order to save it, but at the same time, it's destroying people. So it's a lose-lose situation. Therefore, the government really aren't there to play a very positive role. And so I thought this movie really symbolised that very well. It's set in the future. I thought it was a very authentic future, but there are elements that really relate to modern-day society. And so it's not quite as extreme as this, but it still has that, as I said, that controversial law where you can't really do anything about it. And so there's a mystery behind this government. You don't know if they're good or bad. They say they're doing good things, but what's happening behind closed doors? And that curiosity behind closed doors is what keeps you going through this film. This movie, as far as action is concerned, is absolutely phenomenal. I thought the choreography and the action set pieces were breakneck speed. I thought it was on the edge of your stuff, and I thought, okay, this is something that Tommy Wirkola does very well. But what the movie has going for it the most is the story. The story is very unique. I love the idea of 7 children playing the same character but having to go outside on their corresponding days, and how are they going to do it? And so in a world where unique stories really are non-existent, you have to applaud filmmakers who are willing to do this, and it shows you that there is still creativity as far as modern day cinema is concerned. And so the overall idea, as I said, it was very good. It kept me on the edge of my seat in the first half of the film, and I thought the performance from Noomi Rapace, who is a fantastic Swedish actress, she plays 7 different roles, and most of the roles are different from each other. They differentiate as far as personality is concerned. That's something very hard to do, is that if you're the same person on screen in reality, how are you going to make a personality that's different from the next? And I thought for the most part she does a very, very good job, because you know that Thursday, for example, is different from Friday, and not every character is totally different, but there is enough difference there to really get you into the moment, to really absorb you into a family dynamic, and that family dynamic is something that gives you a lot of sympathy, because all they want is love. All they want is to stay together. And this government is tearing people away from this, but at the same time, you can't hate the government so much because of the ever-present problem that they're facing. And so there is a strong level of sympathy for both sides in this film, and it just shows you how much of a disaster the whole thing is. And so you also got cameos from Willem Dafoe, who plays the grandfather. I thought he had a very emotional role for the time that he was in it. You've got Glenn Close, who plays a government official, that I thought was actually very well done. As I said, she's trying to control the problem, but at the same time creating different problems. And then you've also got cameos from different Norwegian actors, and so there's a strong Norwegian influence in this movie that I think has a sense of Scandinavian class, and so that was all very good. As I said, the continuity is great, the suspense levels are great, and there's a very strong payoff. There's a very violent film, not quite as violent as Tommy Wirkolah's other movies, and the movie lacks that black comedy that made Tommy Wirkolah the household name as far as Scandinavian cinema is concerned. And so it's a different kind of movie, but it still possesses that strong entertainment that you would expect from a Tommy Wirkolah film. So the cinematography is excellent. As I said, a very authentic setting. You've got some fairly emotional music, some very emotional moments, especially at the end as well. And so that was all what capped off what was a very entertaining movie, but it's not a flawless film. And the biggest problem to this film is that it doesn't really play on the great idea at the start. It doesn't really play it all the way through. And I thought it would have been a little bit better if they Tommy Wirkolah absorbed himself in the great idea, as I said, of different people trying to play the same person and how they're going to keep their cover. I thought that could have been played a little bit longer. The movie does play a different sort of role about close to the halfway stage. It does take more of an action route, whereas the first half was absolutely fantastic because it was all on the edge of your seat. Are they going to get caught, or are they going to maintain this facade? And so when you actually know what's going on, then all of a sudden it goes down an action route. Yes, it still has, as I said, the action sequences go at breakneck speed, and it's still very suspenseful, but it was even more suspenseful, and I think it was better once it was using that idea a lot more. And so I thought it could have been just drawn out a little bit more as far as this great idea is concerned, but it doesn't go down that route for all that long, and that's ultimately the criticism I have of the film. But if you are a fan of science fiction action movies, this is definitely one to check out. I was very entertained by what I got, and so it's definitely one that I would say I'm going to definitely watch again. So overall, for What Happened to Monday, give this movie 3.5 stars. Alright guys, this is it for my review. Hope you enjoyed it. Till next time, keep watching movies, and I'll see you later.